we discovered a massive need for women to find an identity surrounding being a woman and an entrepreneur. I'm Marley.
And I'm Rachel. Women like us, women who are the primary earners in our families,
are searching for identity, community, visibility, permission.
A place to be heard and supported.
We are leading with our vulnerability to allow others to feel safe.
We are strong
and feminine. We are bread-winning women.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
We are so excited. We are live here with, of course, myself, Rachel Peterson, and Marley Baird.
I'm Marley Baird.
We are so excited to have you guys on this episode of Breadwinning Women TV and Breadwinning Women, the podcast.
The podcast, guys.
Cool.
Live. Look at that. The podcast is live. So please go check us out on iTunes, on Google Play, on whatever you're on, and subscribe. And you know what? We'd really appreciate some ratings because this is the first time we're ever talking about it. So you guys haven't known about it yet. So please go on over, rate us, tell us if you're a breadwinning woman. Come join the movement.
We are so excited. It's weird putting a brand new podcast out there, but I know you guys are going to love it, especially as we start to add more and more episodes that are first and foremost based on Breadwinning Women TV. But then we're also going to be adding some cool ad-lib episodes as different things come up throughout our week being Breadwinning Women. So if you are here with us, watching us live, feel free to comment so we know who's watching. We're so excited to have you. Are you ready to talk about what we're going to talk about today, Marley?
I sent an email teasing this yesterday and wanted to share, because this is one of the questions we get so often, and we talked about it a little bit last week, about how people are like, so you retired your husbands? Like, what does that mean? Or like, you work and your husband doesn't? Well, no, that's not necessarily the case, not for our families at least. And so this is, it's such a common question we get of like, what's the dynamic between you and your husband and the business? How does this work?
And it's honestly a little bit interesting because when you are a breadwinning woman, one of the things that you don't have is a manual for how to handle what happens when I make enough money that my husband doesn't have to work in a 9-to-5 anymore. We don't need his paycheck at this point. What does that look like? And to be honest, both Marley and I went through this learning, growing process, and it was interesting. I feel like interesting is a very good word for it because it's evolved a lot.
It has evolved. Evolved is the word for it because at the beginning you're so excited that you're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. My husband gets to stay home with me and we'll just like hang out all day. And then over some time you're like, wait, like how does this work? What are we supposed to be doing? Like your roles reverse. And actually, Rachel, this is kind of funny. Your husband, so it's like funny story. Rachel's husband is at my house right now. Well, actually, the husbands are out right now, but he came to visit us, which was so awesome. And Paul said this thing to me that was really interesting. And I don't have kids yet. And one of the things that he said to me was that when you're married, of course, when you get together and you move in together, you learn what your environment is like and you learn how to live together. And then a few months or years or whatever later, you put a baby into the equation. And then it's like you reset all over again and you learn how to live with each other all over again. And when he said that to me, of course, it prepared for me for what's ahead when my husband and I have kids in the next few years, that you don't just expect that everything's going to stay the same. You're growing together constantly. So whether that means through a new baby or a new business that is pretty much like a baby, like your business is a crying baby constantly. And when you start to build your business together, that's another way that you and your spouse need to learn how your environment changes and how you live together with that new aspect.
I absolutely love that. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the backstory about retiring Paul from his 9-to-5. And then Marley can share her experience with you guys as well, because we have different journeys, obviously. Some things are very similar. We're both breadwinning women. And we both like our hair today straight. That's another thing we have in common.
She's like, look at how long my hair is. And she's like,
it's gotten so long. It's like insane. And it's not exciting. It's down to my butt, which is crazy. But there are some things that are very different. For example, my husband and I, we got married after 13 days of knowing each other. So we met, we fell in love.
Crazy.
we decided not to date. I mean, we had a couple dates, but then we got married very, very quickly. So it was kind of interesting because we obviously didn't have discussions about like what the roles in our household were going to look like, or if and when we wanted to have kids even. We didn't even talk about it. We just kind of went for it, which doesn't work for everybody, but we just decided that's what we were going to do. So 1 month after we got married, we decided to make this massive lifestyle change and get pregnant. What we did not expect, we expected it would take a while because most people start trying to have a baby and then it takes a few months or even sometimes a few years. So I figured we should get started on this now so we're done having kids by the time I'm 30. What we didn't know is that we would get pregnant the day we tried. So it was 1 month after we met, actually a month and 13 days after we got married, a month and 13 days after we met, we got pregnant with our first baby. So it was like instantly we hit a reset. I was a single mom coming into our marriage, but obviously that changes the dynamics in your marriage immediately. But the other thing that was crazy on the journey is that we changed careers several different times. Now, the idea of retiring your husband sounds really glamorous. And I know a lot of guys always say, I want a breadwinning woman. I want someone to take care of me. But the reality is, a part of the story that I don't always share, and I feel like needs to be shouted from the rooftops, is that during that process of me going into marketing and me stepping out on my own, my husband was a staple. He was a foundation. He said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to work and bring in a paycheck so that it's stable until we feel ready for whatever comes next. So I would not have been able to take that calculated risk of leaving my 9 to 5 and then ultimately growing the businesses if I had not had that support from him. So he was absolutely crucial in my business getting started. It was almost like he would advance in his career. I would figure out something and find, switch industries. And then finally I left my 9 to 5 and then I got to retire him. So it was like each step along the way was progress, but we had to do it together. So it was, I started my journey at the end of 2015, kind of crazy. 6 months later, I left my 9 to 5, but then a few months later, in September of 2016, I retired Paul. Now, what we initially thought was that it just meant he was going to stay at home, maybe work in my business. We literally, you guys, we didn't think about this or really plan it at all. And it's kind of funny because if we had planned, we probably couldn't have even imagined how it would look working together. But the reality is our roles have evolved over and over and over again. And then we decided to be extra crazy and have a third baby when we were done. Decided to have one more baby and throw another ball to juggle in the mix. So now we have 3 kids, but something really interesting happened along this journey that I didn't expect. And it was towards the end of my pregnancy. So keep in mind, I'm the CEO of at least 2 companies, kind of 3. And I'm pregnant with my 3rd kid. I'm feeling absolutely overwhelmed. So at the end of my pregnancy, there was a point in time where I was feeling stressed. I didn't feel like we had our roles figured out. I felt kind of alone in this process. And Paul actually sensed that something was up and that he needed to support me in my business in a new way. Like he had supported in the past and helped and done little things here and there, but it never felt like we found our groove. Now, as he discovered this, that he needed to support me in building the business, he jumped on in and recognized where my weaknesses were and jumped in as the managing director of Social Media United. So he was able to bring the team together and rally everyone around so that they could get on board with the vision. We all had clear roles and responsibilities and everyone could support the general mission. That was a game changer for us. And then obviously Dominic being born was like hitting the reset button again. We're like, let's try this again. Let's see what happens. It's kind of like it's like going to the casino and pulling the lever and saying, let's see what happens. So we did that again. And, the amazing thing is through this process of retiring Paul, I brought him into my company and realized, oh my goodness, he is one of the greatest partners I could possibly ask for. He is an asset. He is someone who has strengths. He literally has strengths exactly where my weaknesses are on the DISC assessment. I am a high DI. He is a high SC. And so his strengths perfectly balance my weaknesses. And at first I thought, okay, he's going to be a stay-at-home husband or a stay-at-home dad, not a stay-at-home dad because we do have a nanny, but I thought this is what it's going to look like. And the reality is, you guys, what I found from it was so much more rewarding, bringing him into the business, getting him on board with the mission of my different businesses, what we were going to do. It was absolutely life-changing. So we're still figuring out exactly what that balance looks like now with adding that third extra little, a warm body into the mix. But bringing Paul in for me was a lifesaver. And Marley, you guys have a really cool story too. I think it's going to be a totally different angle, which is awesome.
Well, and I love understanding that you're going to hit that reset button every time you add a new element in, or every time your business scales or hits a new level, or you have a new baby. Like, it's unrealistic to expect that you're just going to be together and stay consistent the whole time. Like, that's not what life is about. You're supposed to keep growing and to keep embracing those challenges that come through, because on the other side of the challenges is that breakthrough that we're all just yearning for. And Rachel, when you brought Paul into the business for the first time, did you ever have a moment where, or like just some resistance where you weren't sure like how to trust him with that, or is he going to be able to take over part of the business?
Yeah, and I'm going to be totally honest about this. So sometimes when you are a CEO or a visionary or someone who leads from a big place versus the implementation side of things, you kind of assume that everyone else is just like you. Is anyone else guilty of that? Does it sound familiar? You assume everyone else is like a high achiever who's going to work like crazy, wants to put in hours on the weekends, weekdays, vacations, holidays. You know it. Like, you're passionate about what you do. So the funny thing is, and Paul will admit this as well, we could not be more different in our personalities, where I'm very like energetic and like, let's do all these crazy big things. He's very chill and almost kind of like an unshakable rock. Like, he doesn't make fast decisions usually, except for marrying me because he was a smart man. I'm just kidding. But he is very, very mellow and very chill. He does not like to work in the evenings. He doesn't like to work on the weekends. And so at first we hit this major resistance where I was like, I expected him to basically take over some of the things that I should be doing. And I wanted him to kind of be the same as me, as weird as that is. Now, the biggest realization that I had was that we were two very different people. And the reality is, if two of me were married to each other, that would be a very tough relationship.
I can't imagine the intense energy in that household.
I don't want to even think about it. Like, it would be way too much. But the reality is, I had to go through a process of recognizing what Paul's strengths were and how different they are, and that was actually a superpower and an asset, not only to my business, but to our lives. So at first, there was a lot of, I'll just be honest with you guys, there was a lot of tension when I was expecting him to be the same as me, not communicating those expectations that I had, and him always feeling like he wasn't hitting the mark. But the reality is, one, the mark was unattainable by most people's standards. But number two, I hadn't expressed my expectations, and unexpressed expectations are literally like a black hole of disappointment. I've seen that happen time and time again. So we had to kind of shake things up and discover what our groove was. And the reality is, Paul isn't me and he'll never be me. And that is the best thing in the world. So yes, we had to totally shift what his roles and responsibilities were. And the moment we found it, it was like a bunch of violinists that come together and form an amazing orchestra. Suddenly it made sense.
Mm-hmm. And it took it was a long process for us. Like, at first, yeah, you think, oh, it's going to be so amazing. We're going to work together. We're going to be together. It's just going to be this incredible thing to make love and business at the same time. But there is struggles. With any relationship, you're learning how to communicate, learning how to do this together, learning how to even like spend that much time together. We used to be in the same office. He used to be on that side of the room. And then he has this thing where he like taps his foot a lot, and it would drive me crazy. So things like that, like it's like leaving the toothpaste cap off it. It was like the toe tapping while we were in the same office. So now he works upstairs, and we love it that way, and we can work really well together. And we still use systems like Slack and Facebook Messenger and stuff to communicate. But really easy that we can be together in the same house while doing it. But going back to, it took a while to figure out, where do we work well together? How do we make sure that we have a balance of home life, love life, and still business, and collaborate and not go crazy? And what Rachel's saying about like having the expectation that everyone's going to be the same as you, people were brought up differently. They have different experiences that brought them to where they were. My husband came from a trades background. He was working as a heavy duty mechanic. He worked in plumbing and pipe fitting. He worked out on the rigs for a while. So then to bring him into this online business, working with computers and working with social media, that's a huge change. And for me to say like, okay, here's a camera and here's the video editing program and like, here's how to do this. It was like too much. It's like overloading. Like when you put like a 20 watt into a 60 watt, like it doesn't fit. Like you need to transition and work your way up there. And then there was also the part of me that struggled with trusting. And I think that doesn't even have to be in marriages or relationships. It's when you have someone else in your business, whether it's an assistant or any other kind of hire, when you're offloading the work and like there's that saying, if you want it done well, do it yourself. No. Like I want to squash that. If you want it done well, you need to build and leverage a team. And having your husband or spouse in the business can be an incredible opportunity to do this together, because we were at a point in our relationship and in my business where he was working outside of the home. So he would work in trades. You typically start at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and then still work like a 10 or 12 hour day. So he'd leave for work at like 5 or 6 a.m. and then he'd get back home at 6 p.m. And I would be working the entire time. And I would be working, when you own a business, you're working a lot of hours. So I would be working the entire time he was at work. And then even when he was home, like we'd have a quick dinner, but I'm the kind of person that I had a really hard time unplugging from my business. So we'd have a quick dinner, but I'd like still be on my phone. And then I would pretty much go right back to work and he'd go to bed and he'd be resentful with me that I wasn't going to bed with him, because it's also really important. I think it's the most important thing in a marriage to go to bed and wake up together, just even that time being together. And I was just so fixated on the business and excited. And honestly, there's part of business that gives you that adrenaline rush that it can be like an addiction. The struggles, the highs, even the lows, and then getting back up to the highs. It was a rush for me. And I was at a point in my business, this was just over a year ago, where I was mentally, emotionally, physically drained and exhausted. This was the first time in my life that I was having meltdowns. Like I don't even think I was a toddler with tantrums the way that I was having freakouts back then, that I hit my breaking point. But at the same time, I still loved my business. I didn't want to change anything, but I was just like, this is really hard and I'm breaking, but like, I'm just going to keep pushing through. I'm sure it's fine. I'm just going to keep going. And my husband came to me and said, like, we can't continue like this. And it was that moment that I realized, most of us start a business so that we can have this freedom of lifestyle and flexibility and more time with our family. But then where along the way did we lose that in our business and get so cluttered with the hustle and the hard work that then we're fighting for external validation from our business and our families are fighting for our attention? And that broke my heart to realize that and to understand that my husband was just wanting me back and I was lost in my business. So we made a major change. We actually dropped some of our biggest clients, and it was such a hard decision, because you think of, well, this is my income, this is how much I'm getting paid for this is how much time I'm putting into it, this is all I've known, like this is my stability. But at the same time, it was costing me my mental, emotional, physical stability. So we made the decision to let go of a lot of these clients that was the majority of our income. And we made this decision before we could afford to, because we couldn't afford not to. We knew that I was not healthy, that I needed my space back, that my husband and I needed to reconnect. So I actually, excuse me, we made a very conscious decision to leave those things, because we knew that it was not really in alignment with what we wanted and the direction we wanted to be going. And we had to have a very serious conversation about what is that direction we want to be going? Because at this point, I was going forward in my business and I was like, yeah, come along with me. Like, hurry up. Don't you appreciate me? Like, I'm doing this for us. And he's going, yeah, but that's like, it's not actually for us, because for us, we would be on the same page and doing this together and you would be happy with what you're doing. And so it was a big thing to admit that I wasn't happy. So going back, we let go of those clients and we decided to actually leave the country for a month. We went to Mexico. We went to like a personal development course. We We had like 3 trips within that month. And it was crazy how much during that time I recognized what I was actually healing from. And it was funny that at the time I was like, wow, I'm taking this time for me and this is all about me healing. And then Wayne said to me, like, what about me? Like, you don't understand that you're healing from this like hustle mindset, but also my husband was healing from me being so disconnected from him. And I had, at this time, like I would wake up in the middle of the night in like sweats, being worried about like the emails that were coming in and what I might be missing out on, because I was trying to remove myself from this hustle, but it was just like an addiction. Like I would open my phone in the morning and be panicking about what I missed while I was sleeping. And I know, Rachel, we've talked about this, like you can relate to this too. And if anyone watching or listening to this can relate, like, you know, that feeling where you might realize that you feel out of control, or you feel controlled by the business that you created so that you could have more freedom in your life. I want you to recognize that that's not freedom, and you have a choice here. So while we were away for that month and I recognized what was really going on with me, we also made the decision that Wayne would leave his job and be with me in the business. And there were a few reasons why we did this. One of the big reasons was that I wanted help. I wanted to continue, especially that we had let go of some of these clients and we now knew the direction we wanted to go in. And this is where we really started to specialize in video marketing, which is what we focus on now, YouTube and video marketing. So I wanted my husband to come into this to support me with it, because obviously it was not working for me to do it alone. And I knew that Wayne had these, even like he would film my own videos, like for my YouTube channel, and he would be part of that. And I said, well, what if you took that on in the business and did that? And the other major reason was that I wanted him to do this with me. That if I knew I was going to be traveling for work and I was going to be going on these trips and opportunities and meeting these people, I wanted him to be on that same path with me and understand the excitement that comes from building a business and being passionate about having your own project and creating an impact for all the people you're touching, whether it's your audience or your clients. And there was some resistance at first, because of course, coming from a trades background and then being like technology and cameras and social media, it took some time to just think it out and plan it out. And he decided, yes, let's do it. And this was another case of like, people looked at us and were like, what do you mean? Like, how are you affording for him to leave his job to work with you in the business and be at home with you? And it was something that we took that leap because we knew that at the rate we were going, we couldn't afford to keep going that way. And even if it meant us dipping into savings or having to take out a loan, we knew that we were just so dedicated to it that we would do what it took to build it, but build it together. Whew.
Oh, I love this. So I can hear myself on your camera. Is hearing?
I don't hear anything. Shoot.
Oh, I hear myself twice. Weird. But one of the things I wanted to share, thank you. One of the things I wanted to share is, like, if you're watching this and you are single, you're in a relationship, or you are married, this still applies to you. Because I think sometimes as a woman who wants to run her own business, we all have this idea of what a power couple is. You know what I'm talking about? When you see those couples who are on stage and they're talking together and you're like, oh, I want that. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Like, you
have it all together. They know the secrets.
Exactly. And one of the things that I want to share is that whether or not your spouse, your partner, your future relationship, the person that you enter into a relationship with, whether or not they're entrepreneurial, there is so much support that can come from your spouse, your partner in crime, the person who has your back. And you may not be one of those power couples where you're both on stage, you both have the same skills. And in many cases, that's a good thing that you don't have two people who are very dominant personalities in one marriage. Some people do. But the reality is, sometimes the truth behind a power couple is that your spouse allows you to be the person that you are. They empower you to be the person that you are. I know for me, a big part of the power couple side of things, you're never going to see Paul on a stage. He was on one stage once, a small stage. He does not like that. He does not like being the center of attention. He's not someone who's like, yeah, babe, let's hit off this keynote together. He's like, no, you go do your thing. I'm going to sit in the audience. I'm going to have a beer, like, just go do your thing. But the reality is, what I realize is that the support that having someone who's behind you, it allows you to be free to be yourself. So many times along this journey, I would wonder, what is Paul going to do in my business? But the reality is what he does is so much more, because it allows me to be myself. It allows me to feel free and safe to be Rachel Peterson and to be visible and to be on stages and everything. I know that he has my back and he's a foundation. So the reality and the truth about power couples is it's not always two people on stage that are side by side, like yin and yang, and you see that and you're like, that's awesome. And that is the reality for some couples. That was not our reality. And so wanting that to be what it was kind of silly. The reality is my husband is one of the greatest helpers and supporters I could ever meet in my entire life. I literally could not do anything that I do in my business without him. There are some things that he does that most men would say, like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But like, he wakes up with the kids and gets them ready for the day. That's just one of the small things that he does. And then he comes back and we get hitting on business. We get going on business. And there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, even if it's not outwardly visible, like on a stage.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a question that the breadwinning women will get a lot, is like, well, what is your husband's role? Because a lot of people, and I feel like it's actually a little bit, it's to each their own, but I never want to offend my husband by saying like, he's just retired and does nothing. My husband is the reason why I can stand strongly in my presentations, in my videos, on a stage. Even if he's not up there with me, he is the reason that I can be there doing the things that I'm doing. And that when our family grows one day, I'll just be open about that. One day we're going to have babies, that I can still continue to do what I do without having feeling like all of it is on me.
100%. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting, being a breadwinning woman, I found that people make a lot of interesting comments about the financial side of things, the roles of each person in the couple. Have you experienced that, Marley?
I want to say that there's a difference between a breadwinning woman and a sugar mama. I don't consider myself, we create this business and the money together. And actually, if I'm being honest, like, I prefer not to know, and I think you're the same, that we don't like to know about the financials. Yes, I want to know the financials, and it is really important in a business to know your numbers 100%. But when it comes to like paying the bills and making sure, I don't want to do that stuff. So that's part of what my husband does, and I think Paul is the same for you.
Absolutely. That was something he took over because it was something that it wasn't hard for him. For me, mentally, I don't know if anyone else gets this way, but when it comes to paying bills, it's always a trigger for stress, just because of experiences in past lives and, life being totally different. I do not like paying bills. It really, really stresses me out. And so I am so thankful that I can hand that over to my husband. But I also have gotten some really funny comments. For example, sometimes people will say, wow, your husband married very well. And I've had some comments where people say, like, is it weird for you having a husband who is not the primary earner in your household? I don't know if you guys have ever heard anything like that. And it's a really good question. Have you heard anything like that, Marley?
Yeah, definitely. Of definitely asking, like, well, how does he feel about that he's not making the money? And people get concerned about like his feelings that he's not the primary earner. And I think that is, it's such a common stereotype. Like, it's what people have grown up with. But let's be real, it's 2018. That's old school thinking, to think that a woman should be concerned about her husband's ego if she's making more money than him. Let's realize that this is a partnership, that even though I might be a face of a business, we are doing this together, and we are partners in life, in marriage, and in business. And it's not about, this is our money. It's not that I made it and he's just sitting in the back seat.
One of my favorite things that I've ever heard was from one of our favorite people, Stacey Martino, and we love her so much. We'll have to get her on an episode. Yeah. I think that was amazing. Stacey talks about how there's no such thing as pink dollars or blue dollars that go into a bank account, because it's true.
Ooh, I love that.
That resonated so strongly with me, because the reality is, as a household, it doesn't matter where the money comes from. Obviously, it matters if it's coming from something illegal, but besides that. It doesn't matter if it's coming from, a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. The reality is each person can bring different dynamics and different support to the marriage, to the relationship, to the household. That was a huge aha for me. And I think that's huge for relationships just in general, recognizing that each person has something to bring.
I think that good quality people, and I could say a woman because I think that there's a lot of women watching and listening to this, but a good quality woman isn't worried about how they're contributing and are you making enough money to match me or be equal. It's not being on a pedestal or being higher or lower than someone. It's about both contributing in your own ways. So how come in, like, let's say the old school thinking that a woman could stay home and be the stay-at-home mom and a husband can go out and work, but if you reverse the roles and you both have your priorities, your responsibilities to contribute, it's just a reversal of genders. There's no difference. So even if it's like, it doesn't have to be stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad. Maybe it's just that they're taking care of, and this was us at the beginning, actually, while Wayne was figuring out what his position was in the business, he would take care of the meals and the groceries and making sure that, like, our house was in order. Like, he did some renovations so that I could have this office to work in, that I had my filming set. And it didn't matter to me what the dollar amount he was contributing to our bank account, because him building my office, building a set for me to film, that's what I needed. And sure, I could put, if you want me to put a price on that, let's go see how much I'd have to pay a contractor for that. It does not matter. I'm not worried about the dollar amounts. And ladies, if that's a concern that you are getting, that you're getting those questions to you, I love, like, you can just say there's no pink dollars or blue dollars. This is a partnership.
Thank you, Stacey Martino. We love you. So one of the things that I think of is, like, when people ask you, well, what does your spouse do? One of the biggest things that so we went through a journey. I'll be honest with you. There was a while where we had this joke, and it still is kind of funny now that it's not true. So in the very beginning, when Paul first started staying at home, it felt very unbalanced because none of us had clarity. Nobody had clarity in this household. We didn't know, like, what he was supposed to do versus what I was supposed to do. And so we had this joke that he was my pool boy. Yes, I know that is terribly offensive. It was a joke. We made a t-shirt about it. But then we started to realize, like, that wasn't what our relationship was, and that wasn't what we wanted it to be. What we wanted it to be is basically this idea of, like, I've got your back and you've got mine. And whatever happens financially with our businesses, whatever happens with your businesses, my businesses, maybe we both have businesses that are successful. Maybe we both have businesses that aren't. That's okay. We have each other's backs at the end of the day, and that's what matters. Now, I still sometimes get some funny questions from people. People will sometimes, we have, like, a really nice car. I really like our car. We live in a tiny house, but we've got a really cool car. So we've got this awesome car. I love it. It's our dream car. It's, the Rover Discovery. And people have asked me, wow, that's a really nice car. What does your husband do? I actually kind of think that question's fun because I say he works in my business. He is the managing director for my business, and people just kind of look at you like you're an alien. That's been one of my favorite questions to answer. But the reality is, like, when you are looking, if you are single and you're looking for a spouse and you're looking for someone, don't look at how they can fit into your business, because that's what employees are for, if that makes sense. Your biggest thing that you should be looking for is, how can this person have my back and how can I have their back? You know what I mean? That's a huge part of it. And if you can have each other's backs and there's passion and chemistry and all that, wonderful. But don't be looking for someone and saying, if they don't fit into my business, they're not a good fit into my life. You can always hire people, and it's okay and natural if you have different interests or if you have different businesses or different ventures. That's okay. For us, the balance made sense for me to retire him, and I did that because I missed him. I wanted to see my husband more, and he wasn't happy in his 9 to 5. I wanted him to find what he was passionate about, and it's still a journey. We still haven't quite found what he is passionate about and wants to do for the rest of his life. But right now, he is loving what he's doing in my business.
And he's so good at it. Like, obviously, I know your business well, and I obviously know Paul well. He's hanging out with us this week. But even knowing your team, like, they feel supported by Paul stepping into that position. And it's just been such a good fit for you guys. Like, it's so great to see how you guys did find that dynamic for how he fits into the business. And I love how you mentioned that don't look for a spouse based on, will they fit into my business? Look for your spouse based on, Do they support your needs? Is this a partnership that supports your lifestyle? It doesn't have to be, will they fit into the business? Because that's not what's important. You can have a happy marriage and keep this marriage alignment without them being part of the business. You don't have to both be entrepreneurs. And sometimes in some marriages, you can butt heads that way. Sometimes two entrepreneurs together can be tough. So it's all about what works for you. And Rachel and I are very similar, that like we love personal development and growing and always learning about ourselves to better ourselves, our business, our marriages. And so whatever your dynamic is, find what works for you, find the mentors or find the personal or professional development to support you through whatever that dynamic is.
Absolutely. Now, one question people ask me is, why did you retire your husband? Kind of an interesting question. Part of the reason why I decided it was important to retire him from his 9-to-5, not retire him in life, because he's obviously still working. Part of the reason that was a decision that I wanted to make was because my job requires a lot of travel. And as an entrepreneur, travel is just a part of the job if you're okay with that, if that's something you want. You can travel. Literally, there are unlimited opportunities to travel. So if you're someone who is like, I want to travel the world, become an entrepreneur, because it will happen. It's just a matter of how many things you say yes to. But for me, it was really hard when he had to get time off. And there's only so much time that you can get off, 2 weeks off, every year. And the reality is I wanted my husband there when we traveled. If we were going to do a work trip, I was like, I want him to be with. And it took a while to find the groove, even on work travel. But that alone was a huge part of our decision-making process. Then also the other thing that was a huge factor was, for example, our kids are in sports. And when you're in a 9-to-5, the reality is sometimes they're more like a 9-to-6 or an 8-to-6. It can get kind of crazy. It can be hard to show up for your kids' sports or your doctor's appointments. It can be so hard to find time for that. So for us, we decided, once we were struggling to fit everything into our crazy schedule, let's bring him home. It's time for us to build our own schedule and decide what this looks like. Do we want to go to our appointments during the week? Do we want to be able to book massages? Do we want to be able to do a 9 a.m. tennis class? That was what the decision came down to for us. And the funny thing is, it took me a while to remember that. I worked so much. For the first couple of years, I worked 80 to 100 hours every single week. And I kind of missed the point of this freedom and having the ability to write our own schedules. It took me a while to remember that. And I think, Marley, you guys had a similar experience as well.
So much. Like I said, I lost the whole reason why I started this business. Like, you started this for freedom, yet you're chained to your desk. How does that work? And I watched Rachel, actually. I feel like we learned so much from each other. And I'm so grateful for you. Love you. And watching her, especially when she first told me she was pregnant with baby number 3, I was, of course, so happy, excited, congratulations. But then I was like, I can't wait to watch how you do this, because I know that we want to have babies in the next few years. And I ask a lot of entrepreneurs, how do you do it? How do you juggle? How do you, like, homeschooling, public school? Like, what do you do? How do you manage your day? So I love to learn in that way. And one of the things that Rachel and I have both been working on is that really more intentional time with your family, with your business, so that when you're with both, you're being the most efficient and most present that you can be, and which is going to create huge and just, oh my gosh, way more results for you in your business, the progress, but also your relationships are going to be so much more meaningful, and the people will appreciate you for actually being present. Because I can't tell you how many times, and I feel so guilty when I'm out and I'm getting texts from clients or business, and I'm not present in either situation. I'm not present with my husband at dinner, and I'm not present with my client who might need me for something. And let's be honest, if someone's texting me at dinner time, there might be a boundary issue. That's just an example. It's not happening. But in the past, if there was an issue where I'm with clients and with my husband, I couldn't be present in either. So making that intentional and conscious decision to divide the intentional time, that's something that has been so huge for both of us. And watching Rachel, especially from the outside looking in, it also serves your audience more when you are being intentional and taking the time away. There can be a lot of pressure to be like, I have to be so on for my business. I have to respond to every notification immediately. But the more people actually see you walking the walk in, I love my family and love my business, and I can have both, it inspires them.
Absolutely. And a lot of people saw that shift in my business. And it's kind of interesting thinking back, but me becoming more intentional about my family, about my husband, about my friends, about our extended family, that was a big thing that supported both Paul and I, if that makes sense. Suddenly, he was able to be happier because he saw that I was overall happier. I remember some family dinners where we would get together and I would just be not paying attention the whole dinner and I'd be sitting there working the whole time. And I think about all that time that I wasted, and it obviously made him sad. He wanted to see me alive. And so part of what I was able to do was learn from him how to make work work and family family. And so I actually watched Paul, and he's really good at like balancing those two. Now he doesn't work as much as I do because that's not how he's wired, but I was able to take a note from him and see, okay, I can go out with my friends. I can go out and have a family dinner. We can go out to a movie and completely unplug and focus on the people who are in front of us with us right now. And so I learned a lot from his example.
Thank goodness for our husbands, because that's the example that they are so consistent in, and they show us how to be. And that's how we need to be. That's how all you breadwinning women, I want you to have that in your life too.
Absolutely. This has been such a fun episode. It's interesting to talk about the dynamics of partners and couples and marriage and family. It's a totally different ballgame than business.
I'm sure at some point we're going to have the husbands on the show.
Ooh, if you would like that, you have to let us know, because we think that would be so much fun. So one of the things that you can do to stay in touch with us as Breadwinning Women is to go to breadwinningwomen.com, and we have a place where you can add your email so we can send you the weekly updates on what's going on in the Breadwinning Women world as this all develops, as we build this community and this awesome space that is safe for you guys to really connect with each other and to connect with us. So go to breadwinningwomen.com, enter your email. On the next page, you'll be asked to answer a couple questions for us. That would be super helpful because we want to hear your stories as breadwinning women of what the experience has been like for you.
And guys, we would so appreciate it if you can go subscribe to the Breadwinning Women podcast and leave us a review. We want to build this movement, get more breadwinning women up here. So please head to the podcast, subscribe, and leave your review. We would so love and appreciate that.
We will see you next week on Breadwinning Women TV.